Well, hello there. I'm your host for today, Dr. Kate Kresge, and we are interviewing Dr. Romie Mushtaq, a neurologist and the author of The Busy Brain Cure. Dr. Mushtaq is a physician, speaker, and workplace wellness consultant who brings together neuroscience, integrative medicine, and mindfulness to maximize the performance of Fortune 500 companies, professional athletes, and entire associations. She is going to teach us today how to overcome the stimulant and sedative cycle by reducing dependence on caffeine and other stimulants and sleep aids at night. She's going to talk about how to heal your busy brain without resorting to fad diets or cleanses, and how to promote choices that are sustainable that shift you away from our toxic diet culture. She teaches an 8-week BrainSHIFT protocol that results in better sleep, increased energy, and sustained focus, even for super busy folks. She talks about how to heal the root cause of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, anxiety, and insomnia without addictive medications. This book is based on 20 years of clinical research and experience, and she's going to teach us about it today. Dr. Romie, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kate. I am a big fan of your work, the podcast, and of course, a partner of Rupa Health, and honored to serve this community with this really important discussion.
I agree. And so many people are going to be thankful to hear what you've got to say today because their ears may have perked up when we said that triad of symptoms. Can you tell us, what do you mean by the busy brain? Give us a picture.
Let's start with this idea, and I'm going to go from the 30,000 foot view. Is my background, in addition to being a neurologist, I'm also board certified in integrative medicine. And in my day job, outside of writing and launching this book globally, at the moment, I am a chief wellness officer at a company of over 7,000 employees and consult for other Fortune 500 companies in wellness and do keynote lectures. And what I wanted to say was, before the pandemic, and you've had a lot of this conversations on your podcast, we talked about the stress model, which is typically the acute stress model. And a lot of the solutions that are out there address that. I started to do the research when I was hearing these symptoms I used to experience myself once upon a time, and thought something is amiss. And I started to do the research. And during our clinical research period, and we'll get into that, we had over 17,000 people take our busy brain test and really started to learn what chronic stress can do on the path to burnout. And so chronic stress leads to chronic mental, brain, and physical disease, and chronic stress can kill. I know, not just because I'm a doctor, but because the stress nearly killed me. And there has to be a solution. So there's this one particular pattern that I'm going to have you help me unpack that we see in chronic stress, a very particular pattern of neuroinflammation that creates a hyperactive state of the brain that now leads to this triad of adult-onset attention deficit disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ruminating anxiety, and insomnia. And I really want to repeat that again. A busy brain is one pattern of neuroinflammation that is attention deficit, anxiety, and insomnia. Because in the traditional models of neurology and psychiatry, we treat those conditions as 3 separate diseases, and we can no longer do that. And that's what we're here to discuss today.
I love that. I love that you treat them all at once, because something that you point out really beautifully in your book is that when you're treating these disorders as separate, we often have people who are on this stimulant sedative cycle. Tell us more about that.
You know, how many times I'm standing from the lecture stage or coaching an executive or athlete, and they just start nodding their head like, am I the only one? When I'm like, do you need a venti latte to get your personality in the morning? And you're telling Dr. Kate and I it's a venti latte with oat milk, but really it was 4 energy drinks. And you get to work and you can't focus. There's multiple computer screens and browsers open, not only in front of you, but in your brain. And a task that takes attention and should be done in 7 minutes is now taking 3 hours. And your to-do list is multiplying, so you're feeling anxious and you're using more caffeine, maybe a little sugar to just push through the day, because I serve high-achieving professionals. They have no choice to slow down. And then you're like, oh, wait, I heard Dr. Romie and Dr. Kate on the Rupa Health podcast today. I'm going to stand on self-care and go home. And they go home, but you need to take the edge off. And you're like, let me have a glass of wine or three, or they're just picking the trendy supplement of the moment without giving it thought because they saw it on Instagram and taking it. And then you go down to put your head down on the pillow because you're like, I really am going to sleep tonight. And you can't shut off the battling 72 conversations in your brain. And the most prominent one is a voice of neurotic judgment going, gosh, I think I wore the wrong eyeshadow color on this interview today, right? And it's insane. And that's what's happening. And in order to survive, people need some type of stimulant all day for energy, whether that's caffeine or a prescription stimulant drug such as Adderall or Ritalin. And in order to calm down at night, need a sedative that's also addictive, such as alcohol or a prescription sleeping or anxiety pill. And listen, I'm a board certified MD. There are clinical cases where people need these medications, but any doctor in the world today will agree with me that we are abusing stimulants and we are abusing alcohol and sleeping pills. And that is the stimulant sedative cycle that people are stuck on when they have a busy brain on the path to burnout.
I feel like people at home are thinking, that sounds like me.
That sounds like me. How did she know that like I had a rock star or Celsius sitting on my desk or in the car that I'm chugging while I'm listening to this podcast? And listen, no judgment. We're here to both of us to give you a solution because Dr. Kate, I don't know about you, but I've been there before suffering.
I read in your book, just your story was really touching, and I appreciated the way you wrote your book and how infused with medicine for the soul it was as well. So just hearing the stories of like how you healed by meditating or even connecting with the traditions of your family and sort of how you would carry those messages with you. Before we dive into the like 8 steps and the science, I just want you to help us come home to ourselves. Can you talk about the role of heart in healing from burnout?
I start and I share the story in chapter 3 of the book is we knew something was really wrong with me and it was beyond typical GI issues. And I'm sitting with my father, whose single prayer for me was that I grew up to become a doctor as his only daughter. As a daughter of South Asian immigrants, they moved here to America to give their family and a daughter a better life. And now I'm the patient. And when the surgeon said, you're likely going to need 2 to 3 surgeries, and do you have disability insurance? I broke down sobbing and crying like that little Romie that ran to my dad because my Fisher Price stethoscope got lost. And in that moment, it was like I could feel hope literally depart my soul and go out the door. And I remember in that moment when I couldn't connect to my heart in the deepest throes of burnout, it took male allies. And that is something so important for listeners who are like, I'm going to skip chapters 5 through 9 because it's all science. We put in the leadership stories of male allies that have been a part of my journey there, and you will read about it. Dr. Pellegrini, my surgeon, was one of them. In that moment, he stopped his clinical discussion and brought out his own heart and compassion. And I remember putting his hand on my shoulder and saying, I have hope you are going to get through this. Let's start with 1 surgery. Just that simple action and touch and pause says, I am here and I care. And my father then snapped into it, and my mom, because they're just devastated watching me crying and hearing this news. And my dad is like, of course, beta, we are going to tell everybody to pray for hope. You are going to the mosque, you are going to the synagogue, to the church, to the temples, all of my aunties and uncles to pray that there is hope. And sometimes I just really want to be real. I couldn't connect to that place of heart and hope, that cynicism that develops. My spirit was broken from all that I had endured of being a woman working in toxic masculine environments of healthcare at that time. And Dr. Kate, it's so important you and I share that because as I lecture, it is 2023, you and I doing this interview, and I still meet women every day in science, technology, engineering, math, and medicine who are facing these same slights to aggressions and know that you and I can be there as their hope holders. And that sometimes when we can't find hope within ourselves, reach out and find the people whose only job is not to fix it, not to clinically get to the root cause, but to just say, what's your hope for your brain and your body? And I will hold that hope for you.
That is amazing. You have a protocol to help people get back to feeling joyful and whole and like they're thriving and off of this cycle. And at the end of every chapter, I felt like you would say, there is hope. And you were that medicine for your readers. What's the first step you have someone take who's in that same spot you were in, who is so burnt out that they're not connected anymore? What's the next thing?
What's the next thing is I want you to start with self-awareness. And we ask people to take the busy brain test and get your brain score. This is for the clinicians that are listening, a validated neuropsychology scale that measures the negative impact of stress on cognition, mood, and physical symptoms. Since I serve corporate America and global corporations and organizations, you can't walk in as a brain doctor and be like, you're taking a neuropsychology test. So we named it the busy brain test in order to make it digestible. And we'll put a link here in the show notes. People can take that same test for free and get their brain score. And then the first step is really self-awareness, is what are my physical symptoms? Because I just normalized it, as most of the people I serve do today. Oh yeah, I'm stressed, so I have indigestion, or my blood pressure's high, or my blood sugar's not under control, or I've activated an old back or knee injury from my college sports days. And we normalize it, but understand, and I break down the science in chapter 1 of the book, that your brain is an airport traffic control center, and you and I will dig into the science of it, but it's all interconnected, and those symptoms. And that's literally that first step. And it's hard. Can you and I be real? Like, there is a reason why my aunties, my internal voice of judgment, are throughout the book. Well, in the beginning of the book, they are cutting. They are bitter. Like, oh, help our daughter. She will never get remarried again, Kate. You just got married. Congratulations. Help her. Help Romie. Right? But as you brain shift and you anchor into that hope, you see the voices in my head of the aunties now turn to wisdom and hope. And that is what I want for you, the reader. So that is the first thing, is self-awareness, and know that today you listening to this podcast, that Dr. Kate and I are your hope holders.
So you made this busy brain quiz. Can we paint a picture for folks? What does it feel like filling it out? What sorts of questions are they answering?
It's very quick because we do this in the middle of my keynote lectures, and it typically takes 3 to 5 minutes. You're answering 20 questions that are scaled of things that measure things such as sleep. I have difficulty falling asleep, sometimes, always, never. Things that talk about your mood and depression. Have you been feeling depressed in the last 2 weeks? As well as physical symptoms. The stress is causing me to have more headaches and pain. It also asks questions around libido. So this is a true stress scale measuring that impact. And the way the busy brain test is scored, and this is not my scoring, this is the way the validated test is above a score of 30, we know that stress has kind of converted to chronic stress and on its way to burnout. And you're starting to have cognitive symptoms around memory and cognition, mood symptoms around anxiety, depression, dependency on alcohol or sedatives, and then physical symptoms. And what we did looking at 17,000 people was start to find the markers where they were and where the symptoms kind of coalesced and got more severe. And what we found was above a score of 40, we give you the title, you have a busy brain. And above a score about 55, 60, you're heading to burnout, which is now the busy brain and the chronic stress is actually leading to physical symptoms and dis-ease. And so that's how that's scored.
It's really lovely in your book how you walk readers through psychoneuroendocrinology in a way that's actually, we don't have to get a PhD to understand, although I thought it was so cute that you said you'd want to, because I am the same and we can get stressed.
Let's go together.
I'm down. I'm down. In all our spare time, let's make a goal in 5 years, right? We'll enroll in a program.
So here's the thing, Dr. Kate. I don't know about you, but maybe this is also, I can hear the judgmental Indian aunties in my voice. Hi, this is why you're single. You don't go out. You sit reading research every day. Like in the pandemic, I was like, what is this Netflix thing? I can't binge watch. And I went back to the psychoneuroimmunoendocrinology literature to say, what is the solution without what's a curse word in my world, putting people on another diet or cleanse?
Tell us more.
Girl, let's be real. I would get on the camera and I learned early on, ain't nobody want to listen to just eat berries and breathe and everything is going to be fine, right? But here's three reasons why I am strongly anti-diet. And when I gave this talking point, it comes in the middle of my keynote to clinicians at the American Counseling Association. It is the only time in my career I've gotten a standing ovation in the middle of my talk in the end, literally howling. We could not calm the audience down. Psychologists agree. So, diets, a cleanse, a 30-day program that is restricting nutrition, telling you what to eat, is actually creating more trauma and chronic stress in your brain. This stop eating that, start eating this. And even the meal planning and all of that. And yes, people's belly bloating may feel better and all of those things, but psychologically it's creating harm. And that's why we know when you look at any diet plan or nutrition plan that's out there, people will do it for a week, a month, whatever it is, they rapidly gain the weight back, right? But here's the other thing I want to share to our integrative functional medicine community. Please honor the diverse men and women globally. The 4 or 5 top trending nutrition programs that we promote as an integrative functional medicine community, because we know they work, they are very Eurocentric, very American centric in their diet. I'm a chief wellness officer to over 7,000 employees. And the number one thing I used to hear was, oh my God, the doctor's coming. Please don't take our rice away. It's this idea that we must honor all people from all cultures. And that's why you and I can unpack this in a second. We promote comfort food in our book. The books that are tied to your religious holidays, your family traditions, the state or country you came from, and doing it without guilt or shame. And so for me, that's my nani's biryani recipe. And in the appendix of the book, my loved ones, my way of saying thank you, shared their comfort food, the family recipes, and we're collecting more of them online from the global BrainSHIFT community. We want people to honor the joy that is associated with foods that are associated with meaningful occasions in their lives. And that's what's important. And so we had to find the biohacks in everybody's nutrition plan so that vegans, paleo, carnivores, chocolate lovers could all sit at the same table in the workplace. That's the type of leader and chief wellness officer I want to be and am.
Give us those biohacks, please. Because I think people are listening thinking, wait, so I can have comfort food and I don't have to go on a diet. What was this going to look like?
Yeah, what is it going to look like? Like, no, this isn't hallelujah. It's Girl Scout cookie season. Eat the whole box. No, no. And I had to put a plug in for the Girl Scouts. And I just stepped onto the national board of directors for the Girl Scouts. So I had to put in that plug. So thank you. Here's the thing. Comfort food and stress eating are different. And we walk you through that in chapter 10. When we are stressed, Dr. Kate, and you've had other experts discuss this under chronic stress conditions, one of the things we can have in the disruption of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis is insulin, glucose regulation. And that's why people see a blood sugar drop and will crave something that is a carbohydrate. Interestingly, many people have mineralocorticoid excretion and excrete salts through the kidney and are now craving salty foods. That's stress eating, where you are eating and that is now calming down stress. Comfort food is this, is my comfort food, is my Nani Amma, my maternal grandmother's lamb biryani. Because we have a dynamic, opinionated, tend to argue family. You'll hear about it from all my judgmental aunties in the book. And there was something magical about the 2 days it took my grandmother to cook her lamb biryani. and the aroma that would infiltrate not only the house, but the neighborhood. And people would come and want to sit over lamb biryani, and you could taste the love in the food. And during the pandemic, I learned the closest possible recipe to my nani's biryani. Can you just feel that comfort if you're listening? And think of a food like that in your life. Now, let's be real. There's a judgmental voices going, girl, you're in integrative medicine. There ain't a single anti-inflammatory ingredient in that lamb biryani. And I don't want to dishonor my grandmother or our family memories from lamb biryani. So that idea is have that comfort food once or twice a week. If it is your child's birthday, please honor the birthday and have a cupcake, and don't show your child that you are going to avoid all those ingredients and make a face, because that energy will transfer to the children that are trying to eat the cupcakes, right? Have those moments of a religious holiday in your favorite foods if you want, and enjoy that. The biohacks are this. We go through this after chapters 10 through 14. So don't go straight through this. You have to reset the circadian rhythm. But in chapter 15, we discuss this. The biohack that I found, Dr. Kate, and I'm so eager as a fellow clinician, what you thought was you choose caffeine or you choose a high glycemic carb, not both together. And you and I can break down the science if you would like. So you choose caffeine. So I have cold brew coffee here that does not have sugar in it, or any of like the nut milks that are high in sugars. Or you choose to eat the rice or the high glycemic potato or pasta at lunch or whatever, but you wait an hour before or after the meal to have caffeine. And we found this simple biohack works wonders for daytime energy, glycemic control, and sugar cravings.
It's making sense to me more and more just listening to you why your protocol is called the shift, because I think you do a beautiful job of helping people keep the whole balance of what makes them feel alive and happy and good, but shift it slightly so that it works together cohesively. What could you eat with breakfast if you're having coffee? What's an example of something that isn't a high glycemic carb for the person at home who may be going, well, oh, I normally have cereal or tons of fruit in my smoothie?
So we allow fruit in this. In my background in training in Ayurveda, as well as integrative medicine, I don't see fruit sugars as toxic. There will be colleagues that come on the podcast that will disagree with me, and go ahead. But I understand and value the nutritious value of whole fruits, not the juices, and vegetables. So by high glycemic sugars, I'm more concerned with these 5 simple ingredients: white sugar, white bread, white rice, white potatoes, and white flour. It's that simple. So steel cut oatmeal for breakfast, great. Whatever you use to put in your smoothies, great. Just be mindful of the protein powder that it doesn't have. Some of them, believe it or not, still have added sugars. It may be raw organic sugar, and try to avoid that, right? It's that simple. I like a savory breakfast, Dr. Kate. I don't know about you. So I love when I have leftover quinoa or couscous and can put some type of protein, whether it's egg or chicken left over from the last night, and avocado. That's something normal in the South Asian and East Asian cultures, is to have a savory breakfast. So have something that's just avoiding white sugar, white flour, white potatoes, white rice, and white bread.
I feel like we could take 90 minutes on just nutrition, but I really love the way you tie all this together with calling the busy brain a pattern of neuroinflammation, and then teaching people the science of how to use food and sleep and movement and optimizing their hormone balance to solve it. You are a neuroscientist, you're a neurologist. Can you explain what you mean by a pattern of neuroinflammation?
I would love to. We know inflammation happens not only in the body, but in the brain. A particular pattern of neuroinflammation in our brain cells, where there is elevation of interleukin 6, has already been identified as a core pattern that can lead to Alzheimer's and the neurofibrillary tangles and plaques, as an example. The neuroinflammation pattern we see when a virus enters the brain, when there is neurodegenerative disease. Well, what researchers found is Dr. Kate, this was shocking. I know this having gone through this, but just chronic stress alone can raise those interleukin levels to create that same pattern of inflammation. Now, that inflammation from chronic stress can lead to a lot of different things. I was researching the hyperactive state. So, this neuroinflammation happens for the lay audience and what I call the busy brain center. For the clinicians, it is the relay system that is not just limited to the limbic system, which we talk about in the acute stress response, but also really important the link to the hypothalamus and the SCN nucleus, which is the seat and the pineal gland of our circadian rhythm. And at its core, we are disrupting the circadian rhythm of the brain that now, going back to my favorite term, and now I know your favorite term, psychoneuroimmunoendocrinology, disrupts not only our sleep-wake cycle, our feeding cycle, our restoration cycle, our hormone cycles. Every cycle in our body of every organ system is moderated by our circadian rhythm. And so we go over that for those of you that want to read the science in detail, and the references are all in the book in chapter 5 of the book of having a disrupted circadian rhythm. And it is with that pattern that scientists have found, and I go into it in chapter 8 and 9, higher anxiety levels and attention deficit. And that's propagated by our use of digital devices. So I already have chronic stress and neuroinflammation. Now I'm on digital devices all day, the blue light and all the light, including later into the evening when the circadian rhythm is saying, girl, please give your eyes and a brain a break. I need to rest. And you're like, no, I'm going to stress and obsess and I'm going to check out what's happening on Bravo with my favorite Bravo celebrity, or I'm going to just knock out a few emails after work. And this is what's happening. It's now creating and fostering more. So I already had neuroinflammation and a disrupted circadian rhythm from chronic stress. And then there are other environmental or behaviors that are making it worse. So in a very simple term, that is what we talk about. And then in chapters 6 and 7 and 8, I break down that relationship from the hypothalamic SCN nucleus and the pineal gland and the relationship to how it's disrupting sleep, and then how it's disrupting the regulation of the thyroid hormone as well.
I would love for you to talk to us about sleep, because one of the things that I do feel that you actually honor in your book, which is so refreshing, is that some of us are type A, we want to push, we love to work, we're working hard. And it's really hard sometimes to balance that with a life where you're also sleeping optimally because you are obsessive at night, you are thinking about your projects. What are some of your favorite ways to help people who are like that learn to turn off their brains and get restful sleep?
I want to take a moment, and Dr. Kate, thank you so much, because it's rare in our integrative functional community that we honor the type A success-driven professionals. That's who I serve. That's who I am. I get done proudly more in one day than the average person does in a week, because I'm a woman on a mission, right? And the people I serve, most aren't have the luxury of being an entrepreneur doing the 4-hour work week. I serve doctors and sales managers and airline pilots and teachers and people who work full-time jobs that is be in the standard American 60 hours plus a week, right? And they're worried about their kids or a mortgage or caring for elderly caregivers. Like I often say, I practice integrative medicine in the real world, and we need real world solutions. So what happens when we have a busy brain is everything is coded in our brain as code red, an emergency. So the ding of a text message notification, or that you have more work emails at a time where you're trying to be at home and be with loved ones or relax, creates this false sense of emergency in your brain, and we're unable to tag it. So one of the things I do at Evolution Hospitality with all of our managers and train them in the power of pause, our mindfulness program, is to literally, in your business and in your personal life, please write down what's an emergency, code red, what's urgent, yellow, and what's green, a daily task. it has been one of the most helpful exercises that our executives do. Because in an example in the workplace, code red is the building has flooded, there's an emergency, an employee is injured, something like that, right? In your personal life, it's the same thing. A loved one is in emergency, or the house is burning down. It's not, oh, my boss is emailing at 9 p.m. at night. That isn't it. So that's one useful tip I give. The second one is in chapter 11, we start the 7-day sleep challenge. And I break down a very practical way to tell the busy brain to do a brain dump. Because I got to be real with you. Some of us who got a busy brain, when somebody says write a gratitude list, we're like, really? Okay. I'm thankful I said hi to Kate today, and my brain is still churning with those ideas and to-do list, right? So we actually break down the instructions on how to write down your to-do list at work, your to-do list at home, what you're feeling that day. Write all the emotions that came up. There's no good or bad, just write them out. And then as you end your day and as you're going to sleep, tap in to say, who or what inspired me today? And did I acknowledge them? Did I thank them? And that's a way to shift, right? But we talk about this in the book. Your busy brain is a cloud storage device. And it's like your phone that won't take any more pictures or videos because the storage is full. We need to cognitively release that from the memory relay center. And that exercise alone has helped more people working in your daytime life, and to tag the red, yellow, and green. And by the way, Dr. Kate, in addition to being a chief wellness officer, I run my own company and have my team. We did this with the rest of my team. So they knew what is a code red in business that I need to interrupt Dr. Romie in the middle of her interview or she's traveling for speaking versus what's yellow and can wait for her when she's done with her workday versus what's a green task that we can put in Asana or discuss at a team meeting. And we teach this to our team. So I hope those two things help at work and then doing a personal brain dump at home.
I love at the end of every chapter, you had a brain dump where you would summarize the main points. What made you decide to do that?
Because, girl, I know my people, right? They're busy. They've heard me speak on your podcast. They've heard a lecture, and they're going to pick up a book going, this book is 300 pages long. Like, no. So I know my people. You're in a hurry, and you're going to be like, I'll get to the stories later on the audiobook and laugh when I'm driving or walking. I'm going to get to the point. And that's why at the end of every chapter, we summarize the science, we summarize the steps. And listen, my publisher, HarperCollins, God bless them, and the editorial team at Hanover Square Press, they're like, we want people to read the whole book. I'm like, you don't know my people. They already know their busy brain test score. They are waiting for this book come out. They're going to go straight to chapter 10 and read chapters 10 through 18 saying, I'm going to do all 8 things today. And if you're listening to the podcast, don't do that. It's one shift a week so that it's sustainable. So chapter 10, chapter 11, and we give you the summary. If you don't have time, it's there. And by the way, when you buy the book, you get access for free to busybraincure.com. And we have all the resources out by chapter there for you too. And a lot of fun hidden videos and things that will be there. So we know our global community loves these little surprises and fun YouTube videos. So we just made it a collection of things as well.
I found that because as I was reading your book, the temptation, once you see the brain dump summary, is to be like, oh, I could go like read all the summaries of all the chapters, which I did, but it actually made me more excited to read your stories because you do such a good job of using story in a fun, easy to read, compelling way to really help reinforce the points you're trying to make and to make very difficult to understand neurology concepts really fun and memorable. One of the things I really loved reading you write about was how people with attention issues tend to also have brain patterns that make them more likely to ruminate. Can you explain that to our listeners?
Yeah. So, first of all, I'm going to start from a high level. You may have met one of my colleagues in neurology and psychiatry if they're as old as me, because I feel like I've now turned into the auntie that I make fun of in all the books. When we came up in the world of neurology and psychiatry, adult onset ADD or attention deficit disorder was not recognized. You only had it as an adult if you had it as a child. In the reference section of the book and on the website, you will see we talk about the medical literature from about the last 8 to 9 years that's coming from JAMA and British Medical Journal, that we do realize that now adult onset ADD and ADHD is a real thing. One of the biggest contributors is our digital devices, but also chronic stress and having a busy brain. And we break down the root cause that often things like having a missed thyroid disease can be the root cause, or a low vitamin D3 or methylation disorder. We unpack all that. So that's the first thing I want to say, is that having onset of attention deficit disorder in adulthood is real. It's might have been missed as a child, especially if you didn't have hyperactivity, but for many people, it just starts as an adult. What we see in the clinical research is that it's very common that when you have attention span issues without the hyperactivity or impulsivity, you tend to get anxious. There are 8 patterns of anxiety. In this busy brain, we typically see the ruminating anxiety. The worrying is so crippling that you're stuck so far down the rabbit hole that if Dr. Kate and I came lovingly to drag you out, you're stuck in there. You're spiraling. And those two things go hand in hand. And the caffeine during the day and the sedatives at night actually make it worse.
It's so interesting because so many folks with ADHD, when they take things like inositol or things that are calming, they find that it helps them focus. Is that why?
It may be one of the reasons why for this interview, and I know you have other experts, I'm not going to list the supplements that we recommend in this case. And can I tell you why? I may be a purist, Dr. Kate, but you could say it is. I like to talk to individuals one to one and see their labs before I recommend a supplement. I think there's too many people out there that'll listen to a podcast or see a TikTok or Instagram reel and purchase a supplement. And instead, we've missed something on their labs, right? What we actually find is I need to get the root cause of the busy brain cured. They go hand in hand, the attention deficit and the ruminating anxiety, and having sugar stimulating the dopamine reward center, the high blood sugar crashes and lows, increased insulin in the brain will make those things worse. So that's why we have the biohacks and nutrition to make you feel better and get off the stimulant sedative cycle without taking caffeine away. But you will see we strongly recommend in the book in chapter 16, and we go through it in the middle section of the book, to get your labs done by a doctor. And it's one of the reason, and I will put the plug in here, and I wasn't asked to, we're partnering with Rupa Health for these labs because we've ran the BrainSHIFT protocol in over 2,000 executives around the United States. I hand it out all the time when executives hear me speak. And often they'll say, my primary care doctor won't check this full thyroid panel. They don't know why we're checking a vitamin D3 level. I live in a sunshine state. It's an opportunity for education. And so it's why we partnered with it. So I think before I go to supplements, I want to see labs. What do you think, Dr. Kate?
I agree with you. And I'd love for you to talk about the busy brain panel. So if someone's thinking, okay, well, what are the biomarkers I should be checking in my blood?
Yeah, slightly different if your gender was assigned female and male at birth, but let's just go over the general ones. There are some first markers that I just want to assess. Is the pattern of neuroinflammation also in the body? And we check a high sensitivity C reactive protein. It has HS in front of it because too often primary care doctors just mark the traditional CRP. The other things I want to do, we actually cover in chapters 6, 7, and 8 of the book. If you're wanting the science, or actually buy a second copy and give it to your doctor because it's all explained there if you don't want to dig in the science. I look at the H in the shift protocol is hormones. And too often women think of premenopause and menopause or polycystic ovarian disease, or men think of low testosterone. And while they can all contribute to a busy brain, what we found in my research is thyroid disease was the key in men and women that got missed because only a TSH gets checked. rather than a full thyroid panel, which also includes the thyroid antibodies, free and total T3, free and total T4. So that is in the busy brain blood panel for hormones. We do also recommend checking a morning cortisol level, especially before I decide if someone's getting ashwagandha in their supplement regimen as well. Then I in the SHIFT protocol is looking for other markers of inflammation in addition to the high sensitivity C reactive protein. We know that chronic stress and inflammation can stem from or cause nutrition issues to lead to a low vitamin D3. D as in dog 3. So we include the 25 hydroxy vitamin D3 labs in the panel as a neurologist, I find it very important to screen for the methylation disorders. I did in my traditional neurology career back in the 1990s when we would see young people coming in with strokes and history of miscarriage. And now we know with these methylation disorders, not only will the elevated homocysteine levels, which we also check, lead to clotting and issues, but also a busy brain and anxiety. So those are two of the key markers of inflammation that we check. There are additional labs that are on the panel that help us to screen quickly at basic level for autoimmune disease as well. But particularly for busy brain, when I'm looking at attention deficit and when I'm looking for anxiety, we found our biggest bang for our buck was with a full thyroid panel, vitamin D3, and screening for methylation disorders. And then if that starts to show abnormal or the other labs, obviously I'll send them to an integrative functional medicine colleague to check the rest of the panels. I just want to make it clear I'm no longer seeing patients one-to-one, even though I'm licensed and boarded. I'm too busy, but I help refer to doctors like Dr. Kate and myself who are still seeing patients who are certified in integrative and functional medicine.
I love the idea of bringing a doctor your book. I think that's a great way to get a really foundational conversation started around even just screening for the biomarkers you mentioned as a first start. That could be an easy way to get started with a doctor who might not be familiar with functional medicine while you are waiting to get in to see someone else who's a little more specialized. Every doctor in the US understands why screening for thyroid disorders or vitamin D deficiency is important when you want to make sure that your brain is working optimally.
I don't know that they know that, Dr. Kate. Can I push back here?
Of course.
Because I try to send this panel out in the real world for a living. And can I have an authentic moment with you? What really bothers me? And I want to say this out loud because I share it. And it's really hard to share the story in chapter 4 of I never had regular periods in my life. I was not only a brain doctor treating epilepsy patients, I was doing research in women's hormones and its effect on the brain and epilepsy and migraine. And as I would read about thyroid, I'm like, this sounds like me. Hair falling out, mood issues, never had a regular period. And the doctors would only check my TSH and be like, nah, it's fine. It's on the border. And I wasn't fine. And when you look at the medical data in the United States, 1 in 8 women is walking around with either subclinical hypo, low thyroidism, or hyperthyroidism or autoimmune disease. And if you're like me, a woman of color with melanin in your skin, about 1 in 4 of us. And every time I say this in a lecture, I have women that are weeping in their companies because they're like, I knew something was wrong with me and it's not just anxiety. I have all these other symptoms and my doctor won't listen. And I just want you to know you're not alone. And please go advocate for your doctor because women are not treated equally in the US medical system. And we have to advocate. And thank you, Dr. K, for letting me say that.
It can be intimidating in a conversation with a doctor if you don't have a medical degree to advocate for these tests. And so, how can someone use what you've created, your book or your lectures, to help them have that conversation and actually get these labs done?
Dr. Kate, thank you for that. I think it's actually making an appointment with your doctor first and saying, I need a follow up appointment because I need to speak to the doctor. I don't feel like I'm being heard. that will let a doctor know that, like, hey, I need to slow down, because I do want to have compassion for my medical doctors who are still standing after the pandemic. We're losing doctors at the front lines and nurses daily. So they're having to do the work of 3 to 4 doctors or nurses themselves. But it'll tell them, hey, I need to slow down and listen. And then just say, I've been doing the research. I fit all these symptoms. I need a full thyroid panel. Can you help me? But don't just say, I'm stressed. You need to give them symptoms so that they can code for insurance and it'll get covered. That's one option. I think it's why I have always been a raving fan of Rupa Health. You're disrupting the lab collection system where now people can go get the Busy Brain panel or other panels that you have on your website, and a doctor interprets those results. So, yes, you have to pay out of pocket in many cases, but your health is your wealth. And if you take that to your doctor, they have to look at it. And I hope they have a humble moment going, oops, you were right. It wasn't just the TSH. There was a lot more. There was a problem with the vitamin D3, and get that. And I think that would be the second step. And honestly, the last thing is, it's why we have to continue to advocate for more diversity, equity in medical schools and in medicine, so that we have more diverse voices in the field of medicine, because we know this is actual medical literature in every single field in medicine, whether it's OBGYN, neurology, cardiology, primary care. You are more likely to get better care as a woman if you have a woman doctor. You're likely to get better care as a member of the BIPOC marginalized community or part of our LGBTQ community if your provider is also from that community, right? So we need to also push for that. But I know I'm getting away from the subject, and thank you for letting me get on my soapbox. I feel so passionate, and I know at Rupa Health you have diverse listeners as well as in my global community.
I love that you've made it possible for people to get these biomarkers themselves.
Yes, exactly. I'm so glad to partner with Rupa Health. We have to bypass the system so you can advocate for yourself.
Yes, tell us more. Where can people find you and your program and all these tools that you've created for them?
Thank you. My website will include it, Dr. Kate, in the show notes. I thank you, is Dr. Romie, ROMIE, drromie.com. I'm Dr. Romie on social media. We'll put the link. You can take the Busy Brain test for free, the same one that we use to research in the book and that we give to our corporate clients. You'll get a score and you'll be emailed the first 2 weeks of the protocol. And the Busy Brain Cure is now on sale on Amazon, on Audible, available at barnesandnobles.com. And Dr. Kate, can I tell you, since the last time you and I talked, what the exciting thing is? We're selling book rights globally. UK, Australia, Europe, Turkey, China, negotiating in the Middle East and South Asia right now.
Congratulations. I am not surprised one bit to hear it. The world needs this.
We need to disrupt mental and brain health. And I'm so honored in the US to partner with you all at Rupa Health. Thank you.
One of the medicines you give so well in your book is hope. And so I'm wondering if we can close out by just giving folks a 1 to 2 minute story of someone who has used your program to heal and where they are now.
In chapters 10 through 18, you're going to read about several brave souls who gave their stories and their first names. I think one of them is Nancy, one of our employees at Evolution Hospitality. And she is in Hawaii. And when she came, she had, in her words, lost her aloha spirit. She was so overworked, working in hotels, which is a 24/7 job, 365 days a year, and would come home and not spend time with her elderly mother or daughter, and instead just play video games on her iPad. And you'll read her story in chapter 13. She followed digital detox, and it was really painful. And she talks about her level of, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I have to trust Dr. Romie. And by the end of week 1, she said, just doing 30 to 60 minutes at night, she was already sleeping better than she had in 10 years. Just that one step. And then by week 2, she just had this outpouring of love within her. And her mom and daughter didn't know what was happening because she was someone that was just keeping to herself at home. And now she's telling everyone, I love you. including calling her sister who lived in the mainland USA. I love you. And they're like, what's up? And by the end of week 3, she invited everyone over to dinner and she gave away her laptop and her iPad to everyone. And even to this day, that research study was done in 2017. To this day, she practices digital detox. She was in a really dark place and one of our many star employees that we could have lost. I think any leader listening to this podcast, because she felt like she couldn't disconnect from work and she was using video games to escape life. And to anyone that's listening to this thinking, I can't handle my job or my life or anything going on, I want to end this podcast by telling you what I wish someone had told me when I was in the surgeon's office and had no hope. My friend, your brain is not broken. Your mind is not a mess, and your spirit did not depart your soul. You're not alone. Come, hold my hand, and let's brain shift together.
Thank you so much, Dr. Romie, for the work you're doing in the world and for being here today.
It's been an honor. Thank you.
Welcome to Rupa Health, the best place to order, manage, and track results from over 30 different lab companies in one single place for free. It's going to take you under 2 minutes to sign up, and you can order any functional medicine lab for your client in under 30 seconds. Let me show you how it's done. So here's our beautiful interface. I'm typing in the name of my client, selecting the lab that I want to order for them, and hitting send. From there, Rupa and their amazing team handle the rest. They email the client, collect payment, and even offer an interest-free 3-month payment plan. We've also built the world's largest library of information about chronic health conditions, the lab tests that can help you find the root cause, and the evidence-based interventions that you can use to help people heal from them. It's called the Rupa Health Magazine. There, we have in-depth articles about almost any health condition you can imagine. And we give you step-by-step protocols that other clinicians have used to help their clients heal and that are verified by evidence-based sources. You should totally check it out, and it'll transform your practice. And we can't wait to see you. So make sure you sign up today at rupahealth.com.